Moving on for now, the Lebanese government is warring with the country's central bank over fuel subsidies. The central bank ended the fuel subsidies, saying that it could no longer afford to prop up fuel imports except at the black market rate. But the government has adopted a conflicting position, asking the fuel prices to remain unchanged. The government wants subsidies to continue until measures are in place to help the poor. The fuel subsidies have drained the currency reserves. Lebanon's economy is crumbling and its foreign reserves are dwindling. Before the Energy Ministry officially announced the new prices, residents across Lebanon rushed to fill up their cars. Motorists waited in long queues outside petrol stations. Angry residents blocked roads in the north, south and the eastern parts of the country.
شو هالغلا بتنكة بنزين صار 300,000 يعني إذا بدك فاول البيك اب يعني هلا مليون ونص. هلا بدي فاول مليون ونص طلع. أنا ما بعد واصلين بربك هالعيشة.
والشعب اللبناني ما بيتحمل هيك غلا، بالاخص اليوم اكثر الناس بدها تروح على الشغله ما معها سيارات، اذا بدها تدفع بالاجره اجارها كثير يعني اكثر من حد الادنى بيطلع اجاره، بقى ما بعرف كيف البلد بده يستمر.
Meanwhile, the loss of the fuel subsidies would open a new phase in the financial crisis that has sunk the value of Lebanon's currency by more than 90% since 2019. More than half the population has been thrown into poverty. Since the crisis began, the central bank has been effectively subsidizing fuel by using its dollar reserves to finance imports at exchange rates well below the rates on the parallel market. The central bank has now defended its decision to provide dollars at market rates, saying that it had told the government a year ago that legislation would be needed to dip into the mandatory reserve, which is a portion of the deposits that must be preserved by law. Petroleum importers are demanding clarification. One importer has warned of huge fuel shortages due to inadequate supply. While the government said petroleum products must continue to be sold at prices based on a subsidized exchange rate, the central bank would only open credit lines for them to import at the market rate. President Michel Aoun summoned Salameh to the presidential palace, but the governor, Riyad Salameh, refused to back down at that meeting. Salameh said the use of the mandatory reserve required legislation. The source said the idea of draft legislation was discussed at the cabinet meeting and the government would be working on a draft. The fuel subsidy has been costing about $3 billion a year. The central bank said it had spent more than $800 million on fuel in the last month. The reserves have sunk from more than $40 billion in 2016 to $15 billion in March. WION now available in your country. Download the app now. Get all the news on the move.